This is Faith Donovan, and I will be talking about the Malcolm Gladwell book, Outliers, the Story of Success. As we know, great leadership is the secret to success, but perhaps there are even deeper secrets that dictate who can become a great leader and ultimately attain success. Malcolm Gladwell is the author of this book, and here's a little information about him. He was born on September 3rd, 1963. He's British Canadian and a staff writer at The New Yorker, and he is an award-winning author who has written 4 books with a 5th that will be released this year. And in 2005, he was nominated one of the Time magazine's 100 most influential people. Now, about Outliers. By observing uniquely extraordinary instances of success and the iconic leaders who achieved that success, much can be learned about the less than obvious nature of leadership and how difficult, mysterious, and tenuous it truly is. Outliers presents numerous cases of leaders from cultural, statistic, mathematical, and otherwise peculiar angles. It goes beyond academics and into the real world. So, Outliers examines numerous outstanding examples of how sometimes leadership and success are beyond our control, strangely coincidental, or just plain strange. Between the prologue and epilogue, Outliers is separated into 2 parts, broadly categorizing distinct ramifications of success throughout extraordinary means. The first part is opportunity, and Chapter 1 is about the Matthew effect. By examining the Canadian Hockey League, the vast majority of players have birthdays in January, February, or March, as a result of the date cutoff in school leagues. This creates a disparity in the age, size, and skill level in players born in January versus those born in December. Consequently, the larger, older players make it into the league, while the others do not make the cut. This also happens in education, where each grade has an age cutoff, causing difficulty for the younger students in grades. This is a 3-part problem: selection, streaming, and differentiated success. So the leadership lesson here is, if you notice, of the Fortune 500 companies, 65 have CEOs that went to Harvard. 27 of CEOs went to Stanford, 24 at UPenn, 18 at Columbia, and various other Ivy League schools among the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. But due to the Matthew effect, if you compare 2 students in the same grade with birthdays at opposite sides of the calendar, the older student will typically score between 4 and 12 percentage points higher than the younger student, which could be the difference between acceptance into the Ivy League or not. Chapter 2 is about the 10,000-hour rule. Mastery of a subject occurs at 10,000 hours. Multiple studies have shown this, and this requires years of dedicated practice. Whether the leaders of computer programming, such as Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or Bill Joy or Paul Allen, or musical brilliance such as the Beatles, it has been repeatedly shown that the amount of time it takes to truly master a subject is about 10,000 hours. The leadership lesson here is the analogy that leadership is to mastery as management is to proficiency. Not all managers are leaders, and a manager may be good at something, but he may not truly be a leader until he has achieved mastery. Chapter 3 is titled The Trouble with Geniuses, Part 1. It's been shown that IQ is not directly proportional to success. There is a threshold at which a higher IQ no longer ensures greater success or more adept leadership. After that threshold, other factors become more important: personality, skills, communication. This also influences affirmative action decisions. A particular group may have lower test scores, which may predict their success in school. However, in the real world, this group was shown to be just as successful. The leadership lesson here is that leadership is the process of influencing others to achieve goals through verbal and nonverbal messages, according to our textbook. Without the communication skills necessary to influence people, a person's IQ is of lesser importance. The Trouble with Geniuses, Part 2. So there are two distinct parenting styles. Giving equal intellectual intelligence in children, it is the upbringing that will determine the success. Wealthy parents tend to be more involved. They enrich the child with activities and teach communication skills, including negotiation, which is invaluable to a successful leader. Poor parents, however, are unable to spend as much time. They spend less time, facilitate fewer activities, and teach less effective social skills. And it's the chart here that shows the different sort of parents. Authoritative parent leads to a cooperative child. Permissive parent leads to a rebellious child. This directly correlates to the managerial grid that we learned about in class, and it sort of shows that you have to be able to both have concern for people and concern for production, the same way that a parent must have concern for the student's well-being as well as the student's motivation and success. And as a parent would strive to be a good parent, a leader would also strive to be the team management type of leader. Chapter 5, The 3 Lessons of Joe Flom. Opportunities must be seized. If you are not accepted into an established group, create a new group to fill a niche. If you are part of a smaller group or generation, take advantage of less competition. If you don't have opportunities in a certain field, work hard and be assertive to be successful in a less competitive field. And this brings us to the 3 primary characteristics of a leader. Leaders make something happen, leaders create the extraordinary, and leaders are ethical. So even if you find yourself in a group where you are struggling, a true leader will step forward and make something happen. Or even if you found yourself in a profession where you can't be successful, a true leader will make something extraordinary out of that situation. Part 2 regards legacy. Chapter 6, titled Harlan, Kentucky, shows that behaviors are familially and historically ingrained. Those whose forebears had to be strong-willed for their success and livelihood will likely also be strong-willed. So if your ancestors had to be very hard farmers or cattle herders or whatever the situation, maybe they would have had to have adopted characteristics to make them successful. And therefore, you, down the line, would also possess those attributes. And this takes us into individualism versus collectivism, and it's just one of the very many things that are sort of culturally and contextually passed down from generation to generation and among cultures. So if you're in a particular culture, or your grandparents were in a particular culture, that same culture would have been passed down and would have been passed down again to you. Part 2 is Legacy, Chapter 7, The Ethnic Theory of Plane Crashes. Communication styles dictated by cultural and social norms will impact communication in business and organizational settings. We discussed this in class thoroughly, and what it breaks down to, among many other aspects, is high context culture versus low context culture. Those cultures where being open and honest is important versus where leadership and hierarchy is very important. Whatever the culture is that you grew up in is going to dictate your ability to communicate with your peers and your leaders. Chapter 8, Rice Paddies and Math Tests. Different cultures value work differently. These views influence how hard a person works, and those who value work highly will work harder. And this correlates to short-term orientation versus long-term orientation. If your sights set on a very short-term goal, you're not going to work that hard. If you have a long-term goal and you realize that your livelihood is going to be impacted for a long time to come based on your work now, then you are going to, of course, have a long-term orientation, and you're going to work harder to do better work over the longer period of time. So as the book has showed that it relates to leadership, Outliers examines numerous outstanding examples of how sometimes leadership and success are beyond our control. By observing uniquely extraordinary instances of success and the iconic leaders who achieve that success, much can be learned about the less than obvious nature. Outliers is a fascinating look at the highest echelons of success and icons of leadership and the unique circumstances that separate the ordinary from the extraordinary. Rather than being a manual or a guidebook, Outliers is a case study. It does not persuade, it informs, and by doing so, it provides a more accurate understanding of what is necessary to be a great leader. Every chapter provides additional insight based on empirical evidence on a broad array of success influences. And so rather than being just a manual on success, it's a really hard look at the ramifications of success and the influences of success. Thank you.